everyone, my name is Toy Pham and I'm the founder of Spectrum Tuition. One of the most common questions I get is what's the difference between scholarships, accelerated programs such as the SILP, and selective schools. So in this video, I'll explain the difference between these three programs. So as parents, we want the very best for our kids. We want them to be happy and healthy. We want them to be able to attend the very best schools that can cater to their individual needs, and we want them to get the best opportunities in life. So if you're currently researching high schools, you may have heard that certain schools are more highly ranked than others, but you might feel at a loss because you may be unable to enroll your kids because of certain factors. So how can you gain entry to your chosen school? So while you're doing the application process, you may find that you may be outside of the school's catchment zone. You may not be able to afford the school fees at this particular time, or the school may require you or your child to sit an entrance exam. So you can still attend these schools even if you live outside the zone. And the way you can do that is through a couple of different options. So firstly, you can apply for scholarship programs. You can apply to sit or gain a place at an accelerated learning program, or you may apply to gain entry into a selective school. So what's the difference between scholarships, accelerated and selective schools programs? Firstly, scholarship programs are offered by private or independent schools. Often the fees for these particular schools could range anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000. So with a scholarship, you're offered a percentage reduction of the school fees, and the number and discount offered varies by school. So what we've actually got here is we have developed a tool called scholarshipsearcher.com.au where you can just go in, type in your suburb or your postcode, and you'll be able to find a scholarship for a school that is around your area. So with scholarships, they can be run either internally by the school or by an external testing company. So with scholarships, while the fees, while you may get a reduction in the fees, this may still be quite out of reach for a lot of parents. So, if you get a 50% scholarship to a $30,000 a year school, that's still $15,000 out of pocket. So what another option would be to have your child apply for an accelerated or place at an accelerated learning program. So accelerated learning programs are gifted programs often run by government schools. So often there are little to no fees, offering the opportunity for your child to join a class specifically selected based on their academic ability. Okay, so note that various schools have different names and offerings for this type of program because it is independent, and we recommend that you pursue further research for your chosen school. So the benefit of programs such as this is that it accelerates the learning of students so that they can potentially skip a class, allowing them to attend university a year earlier. So often for accelerated learning programs, you might skip year 8. So you go from year 7 to year 9, or you do year 7 and year 8 in 1 year. It also allows students to mix with like-minded students and take part in a more rigorous academic programs than the mainstream students. So one of a specific accelerated learning program is called the SILP. So that stands for Select Entry Accelerated Learning Program. So this is actually an accredited program overseen by an independent body that has been operating specific programs at authorised schools since 1980. So as mentioned earlier, this allows students to accelerate their learning by either skipping year 8 or having a combined 7 and 8 year so that they finish Year 12 earlier. They may also choose to complete Year 12 over 2 years to lessen the load. So instead of doing all 5 or 6 subjects in 1 year, they may choose to do 3 subjects 1 year, 2 subjects the next, plus a number of university subjects if your school offers that. And students will be placed in this specially selected class for the duration of their secondary schooling. So they often don't mix with the students in the mainstream school a lot of the time. So the next option is the selective schools. So unlike an accelerated class of students who are selected based on academic ability, selective high schools provide students with the opportunity to join a school where all of the students are selected based on their academic ability. So, you know, the students mix with all the other students from the school, not just with their individual class. And as all students are selected to attend, this offers the students a very unique environment to be academically challenged, because they'll be learning alongside some of the brightest students in the state. So in Victoria, there are currently 4 select entry high schools. There's Melbourne High, there's Macrob, there's Suzanne Cory, and there's Nossal High. So selection is conducted through a series of tests administered through EduTest. So unlike the scholarship and accelerated learning programs where students will be sitting the exam when they are in Year 6, the students will sit the Victorian Selective Schools exam when they're in Year 8 for entry into Year 9 each year. So the test will generally take place in June each year. The test will include questions several year levels above a student's existing level. So for the Victorian Selective Schools exam, the maths, you can expect the level to be at about a Year 10, early Year 11 level. So while you can sit the exam each year until Year 11, it's best to sit the exam in Year 8, because if you pass the exam to a high enough standard, then you gain entry. Whereas in other years, there's also a compulsory interview component that you need to pass, even if you do incredibly well on the written component of the exam. And so the next question is, how do you know whether your child should be sitting a scholarship or select entry exam? So the first thing to ask yourself, or the first question to ask yourself is, did your child score above average across most or all sections of their NAPLAN? So whatever your opinion is on the NAPLAN, it does provide you with a standardized measure as to how your child performs in relation to the other students in the same cohort that they'll be competing against throughout their schooling. So these are the same students that the students will be, that your child will be competing against in scholarships, in VCE exams, and so forth. So what you need to look out for is whether your child scored above average results across most, or if not all, sections of their NAPLAN test. So this dot here in each section represents your child's performance. So what you should be looking for in terms of your child's results to determine whether they are capable or whether they're ready to sit these scholarships is as close as possible to that very top triangle. So in the past, we've had a lot of students who whose dot was actually inside that triangle. Otherwise, in the very top section, that will give you an indicator that your child has above average abilities. So the second thing to look out for is whether your child is passionate about learning new things. So does your child like a challenge, or do they give up easily? Are they curious? Do they have the perseverance to keep going even when things get hard? Do they often commit to completing tasks? Okay, so a couple of questions to ask yourself. Because if they're likely to not persevere, the process of preparing for an exam is going to be quite a strenuous one. So you want to make sure that your child, has it in themselves to be able to stick to things and follow things through. The third thing to ask yourself is whether your child feels unchallenged by their current schoolwork. So, if you're finding that your child often finishes work early and mentions that their schoolwork seems to be quite easy, it's important to at least try and have them enroll in a school where they will be academically challenged. Because if you don't do anything and leave things to chance, hoping that things will improve, when you don't have actually any bearing on the outcome, you run the risk of your child plateauing, and then it's really difficult to get out of that situation. Okay, so the fourth thing to ask yourself is, does your child have a talent for thinking creatively? So do they look at patterns in a different way? Are they adaptive? And finally, is your child in grade 5 or year 7? So often students will be asked questions several years above their level. So our courses are designed to be completed 1 full year before students sit their exams, so they can learn the concepts before we give them practice exams. So we have classes for students at a year 5 level to sit scholarship exams in year 6. So they would start at the beginning of term 2, and then the program will run up until the end of term 1 in the following year. The same with the accelerated learning programs, and with the selective schools exam, students need to be in year 7 in term 3, and this program will run all the way until the end of term 2 in the following year. So some common questions is, what will be the structure of the exam? So this really depends on the exam that you sit. The structure and the components of the test will vary. So the first structure that we're going to go through is the ACER structure. So generally the ACER structure, ACER tests are generally used for scholarship exams. So it generally has 4 components. Firstly, you've got 2 writing tests, so often it's 1 creative and 1 analytical. You've got a humanities or reading comprehension test and a mathematics exam. So the mathematics exam will generally have questions that contain multiple parts, and the difficulty level will be pitched up to 2 years above your child's existing level. So if your child is in year 6 when they're sitting the exam, expect the test to be at a year 8, early year 9 standard. The next structure that we'll be looking at is the EduTest structure. So the EduTest exam generally has 6 components: 2 writing tests, generally again a creative and an analytical, a mathematics test, reading comprehension test, and numerical reasoning and verbal reasoning test. So generally with the EduTest structure, there are a lot of really short questions, but you've got a lot of them to do. So for example, you can see here that the mathematical reasoning test, there are 60 questions to do in 30 minutes. Reading comprehension is 50 questions to do in 30 minutes. Numerical reasoning, 50 questions to do in 30 minutes. And verbal reasoning, 60 questions in 30 minutes. So the questions will also be pitched at a very high level. So, it's really important that students have an understanding of what that structure looks like. And then, unlike the other exams, the last type of exam is the Academic Assessment Services exam, which contains mathematics, reading comprehension, and written expression, but has an additional general ability exam as well, which will contain questions relating to numerical reasoning, verbal reasoning, and abstract reasoning. So as you can see, many of the sections for each of these 3 structures overlap, so preparing for these exams is definitely achievable. here are some tips to help you. So what can you do to help your child prepare? The first thing to do is to make sure that they're reading. Make sure that your child is reading a variety of texts, such as information text, so like how the Wikipedia articles are written, newspaper articles for persuasive, as well as fiction, drama, and visual texts like comics, also a lot of graphs. The second thing to do is to make sure that your child's math skills are up to standard. So as mentioned before, often students will be tested on maths topics several years above their existing level. So also you're often given just 30 seconds to answer each question. So mental math skills are a must to save time. So you don't want to be fluffing around with working paper and that type of thing when you've only got 30 seconds to answer a question. So brushing up on your general mental math skills is really, really important. Okay, so the third thing to look out for is that all of these exams will have a writing component. So you must learn how to structure and write a narrative as well as a persuasive essay really, really well in just 15 minutes. So we've got a specific structure that we go through in our classes where students will have that structure in the back of their mind so that when they come into the exam, they've only got 15 minutes to write an essay, but because they've got it all structured out in their mind, they can get started with it straight away. Okay, so the next thing is to get your child to have a go at some practice exams. So we provide practice exams for students preparing for each of these types of exams at our digital bookstore spectrumlearning.com.au. And for being a viewer on this particular video, we will give you a 10% discount code with the code YouTube10. So the exam packs are important to do because it helps students familiarize themselves with the different types of questions that are very closely aligned with the questions that they're likely to see on the exam, so they know what to expect on the actual day. Because the last thing you want the students to experience is by going into the exam, looking at a question, never seeing it before, and while as a bright student you might be able to work out how to do the question, it might take you anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes to answer that particular question. In the meantime, students who are already familiar with certain questions will have moved on. So, by spending a lot more time on each question, it reduces the likelihood of you actually finishing that exam. So even though you might get 100% of, half the question 100% correct, that's still only half of the test. So the most that you could get is a 50% score, whereas if you work through these questions a lot faster, you can get through a lot more of the test. Right, and the next thing, the next way to help your child is to get some help. So if you need some more guidance beyond the practice exams that we provide, we have classes at various locations around Melbourne. So our 40-week program covers all aspects of the exams, building up your skills over time to improve your confidence when sitting exams, and it's essential that you do prepare. So we do conduct our 40-week course. We cover all aspects of the exams, such as the essay writing. So we teach you how to write essays in 15 minutes. We go through lots of different types of questions, and we teach you the best strategy and the best techniques to be able to tackle the questions within 30 seconds. So we aim to build up your skills over time and to improve your confidence when sitting exams. So in the homework section, we often have a practice exam so that you can apply the knowledge taught in class straight away to exam style questions. And it is essential that you prepare for these exams, because just like anything, if you were to run a marathon, or you were to perform at a music concert, you wouldn't just turn up on the day. You would definitely be doing a lot of preparation beforehand. This is a high stakes exam and you don't want to leave these things to chance. And we do conduct a free assessment to determine your current abilities, after which we will develop a personalised plan for you to help you achieve your goals. So to book in your free assessment, just simply call 1-800-668-177 or visit spectrumtuition.com, and we'll book you in for that free, no obligation assessment to see where your child's current abilities are. In the meantime though, what you can do is get access to a free 5-week online preparation course. So this is a free email course that we've created for you to be able to familiarize yourself with some types of questions, the exam structures that I mentioned earlier. So you just go to spectrumtuition.com/free-scholarship-selective-entry-exams-practice. Right, and you should be able to have a look at some free exam papers on that page as well, and also sign up to that free program.